In the middle of the solar system, the sun expels a massive flare that starts hurtling toward the other planets. Meanwhile in Turkey, Armin is out on his boat enjoying his work as a diver. After a few hours of swimming, he meets with his ex Defne, who has come to ask Armin to join her on a deep-sea voyage to the Erebus Trench. When she mentions that they're being sponsored by Yenilik Incorporated, a company that belongs to his father, Armin doesn't like it and an argument ensues. Defne makes him promise to at least think about it. In the evening, the solar flare destroys a satellite. The flare is moving at great speed and approaching Mercury, which is soon picked up by Çelik in an air base in Adana, the Turkish capital. She immediately shows this to her commander, who says she'll tell their superiors and asks her to keep it quiet. The next morning, a mysterious file is dropped under Armin's door, so he rushes to meet with Defne again. He finds her with her new fiancé Kenan, which makes things a bit awkward. Armin asks for more mission details, so Defne shows him some maps while explaining his father is looking for fuel. There's a location that wasn't seen in 100 years and has been found again, which makes Armin excited because there he'll find Savalia savaglia, a black coral he's always wanted but never could put hands on. Armin agrees to go, and in the evening he joins the rest of the crew, happy to see Defne's assistant Rana, marine biologist Kem, and oceanographer Felix. However, Armin gets upset when he sees that Kenan is also coming, and because he gets a call from his dad, not believing he cares. At the air base, Çelik overhears the higher-ups having a meeting and learns that dangerous gamma rays are coming to Earth, meaning humanity doesn't have much time to prepare. Later at home, Çelik calls her mom and tells her to hide underground before Thursday. Unfortunately, her bosses intercept that message and send soldiers to her house. Çelik sees them and immediately rushes to block the door with some so she can escape through the back, leaving her phone behind. By the time the soldiers break in, Çelik is driving away. Out at sea, Defne decides to do a preliminary dive before reaching the trench to test their submarine, so everyone goes with her while Kenan and the captain stay on the boat. Before they leave, the captain says they've received word that there's something wrong with the ocean over in Asia, but it's blamed on a volcanic eruption, so the group leaves anyway. They're underwater for a few hours when suddenly Armin sees a flash of light, which is strange because everything should be pitch black in this area. They return to the surface, but nobody on the boat is answering the radio. Then they search the boat, only to find it completely empty. On a laptop they discover a video left by Kenan, explaining that they got a message from Asia saying that the sun is killing everyone as it rises, so he and the others have left to find a shelter in Coast Town. The group agrees to go to the same bunker, but first they must return to the shore to charge the submarine. During the trip, they see something on the radar coming closer. When they finally step on land, they find the whole area empty and there's no power. At that moment they see a huge military submarine come to the surface called Yakimos S-245. The Navy troops come out and are confused by the lack of power and phone reception. Armin tells Commander Erene what they know as Defne receives a satellite video message from Kenan, which shows panic taking over the people on the streets. Sunrise is in almost 4 hours, so Erene and his second-in-command Umut gather the soldiers and order them to find the shelter Kenan mentioned. Felix and Kem get some tools from the sub and leave in a car, hoping to find the electrical installation to fix. Defne and Armin tell Rana to wait there while they join the search, and as soon as they get in another car they're joined by Umut. Moments later, an explosion is heard on the docks. Rana cries because she's scared of dying, so Officer Yonca comforts her. Meanwhile, Felix and Kem finally find the electric towers. The place is an abandoned mess with electrical wires fried and sparks going off. They decide to try anyway. Kem is shaking and struggling to concentrate, which is soon explained by a bag that falls from his pocket. It turns out he's been taking illegal uppers, so it's better if Felix takes over the repairs. Armin's group makes it to Kos, only to find a fire and a bunch of bodies on the ground. All of them are dead and look like they've combusted internally. Following Kenan's video, the group enters the church, which is also full of bodies. Soon the officers arrive and start searching the town, finding bodies in every corner. Suddenly Officer Barish starts feeling sick and throws up. Armin finds some thermal binoculars in a car and looks all over the area, but there's no movement, which means there are no survivors. At that moment the officers inform Umut that they found a person in a bank vault. The trio rushes there and finds the survivor rambling in ancient Greek. Armin can speak that and talks to him, learning that he survived because he's underground and that place is made of lead. The man also keeps saying everyone's wrong. A medical officer says the guy has internal bleeding and weak respiration, so Umut shoots him. Furious, Armin yells at Umut, who just says he did it out of mercy. The officers decide to go back and hide in the submarine. Defne still wants to find Kenan, so Umut gives her and Armin 30 minutes to come back to the docks before the submarine goes underwater. At the bank, a few officers try to get some bags of money before leaving, pointing out the owners are dead. This immediately triggers a fight. At that moment, Felix brings back the power. This activates the bank's security system and a bunch of officers are caught inside. An officer outside tries to help them, but the door is closing so he has to step back to save himself. On the docks, Felix and Kem come back safely. Rana checks online and learns that according to scientists, the incident is a result of a change in the sun's polarity. This change happens every 11 years, but this time it was stronger than usual and caused the eruption that sent out those giant gamma rays. In Kos, the evacuation signal starts wailing from the speakers across town, mentioning a shelter in Taigaki. Daphne and Armin immediately head there, only to find the shelter also full of bodies, including Keenan's. Armin grabs Keenan's phone and watches the last video, which shows how everyone in the shelter internally combusted at the same time. Officer Alton isn't happy either and reminds Armin he has no authority here. The rest of the group is put on cleaning duty and Felix says this is their new normal, because he doubts they'll be able to return to the surface. Suddenly Alton and other officers kick Felix and grab Kem by the neck, hurting him as they blame him for the death of their comrades. After insulting him, they let go of Kem and tell the group to clean up. Udom sees everything from afar but doesn't intervene. Daphne tells Armin what happened, but Armin says they need to play along or the officers' attitudes will get worse. Furious, Daphne goes to tell Rna of the incident too, but Rna says his soldiers are good and nobody will try anything under his watch. Meanwhile Barish continues to have hallucinations and even claims to see someone crawling around in the vents, but they don't believe him. Soon the officers discover that there are a few food cans missing, so Alton confronts Daphne about it, but Yonja comes to her defense. Getting even angrier, Alton gathers the troops to tell Rna that Armin's group has stolen from them and should be kicked out. Armin comes through and offers a powerful speech about how they all lost loved ones and instead of fighting they should work together to survive. At that moment, Felix notices Barish has a hand grenade and immediately rushes to tell the others. While the civilians stay behind, Rna and the officers go to see Barish, who won't listen to them because he's too far gone. He starts rambling about people that need cleansing and how Earth needs to rise again, mentioning some incoming Judgment Day. Realizing what's about to happen, Rna locks the door behind him just in time. Barish detonates the grenade, dying with Rna. The alarms immediately go off and various leaks appear on the sub, which could cause the pressure to make it explode at any moment. The troops team up with Armin to try to fix the damage, but how hard they work and how many tools they bring, nothing works. Kem is starting to lose his mind and Alton scolds him for it as he grabs him by the neck, so Felix immediately pushes him away. Eventually the group gives up on trying to fix the leak from the inside. Their only option is to swim out and plug the sub from the outside. Daphne points out that's too dangerous at this depth, but Armin reminds her they have no other choice. In private, Yonja is crying for Rna, who turns out to be her father. Umut interrupts her to order her to swim out with Armin because she's the only one in the sub with the knowledge to help. After suiting up and grabbing specialized equipment, the duo swims out in the darkness of the deep sea until they find the leaks. While they work, Yonja is suddenly hit by an anglerfish, which knocks her back and makes her miss the location of the sub. Inside, the lights go out as the switchboard goes offline, so they have to activate the auxiliary power. While the officers work on fixing the main power source, Armin continues to work on the leaks, sealing them well. Then he looks for Yonja and finds her just in time to return to the sub without receiving any pressure damage. As they come in, they agree they won't tell anyone what happened. Minutes later, Umut becomes the new commander and Yonja is his second in command. Umut announces they'll go to the Iskenderun naval base in Turkey. For the next few hours, everyone tries their best to be patient. Felix watches over Kem, who is going through withdrawal symptoms because of his addiction. Eventually the submarine makes it to the base and they find empty police cars outside the building. The officers search the whole area, but they only find bodies everywhere. The troops give them proper burial with the traditional army ceremony, and Umut sees a girl among the bodies in the grave, meaning he's hallucinating as well. Another officer snaps him out of it when he informs him they've checked the news and learned there are fires everywhere. Kem heads off to have a smoke and sees the city on fire in the distance, so he starts to lose hope. Afterward Yonja puts up a picture of Rna in the sub and the others offer a final salute. Armin and some of the officers do more work on the leaks for extra safety, and Umut sends the others to look for food and medicine in the base while he and Rana check the computers for more information. In the base kitchen, Alton tries some of the food and says everything is tasteless. Something is moving in the shadows, and when Alton and Yonja hear a noise, they go to investigate. Yonja notices that the bag she left on a counter is now gone. They end up finding a broken can and assume it just exploded. In the infirmary, Daphne notices that Kem is looking for something that could help him with his addiction, so she moves him away. However, he's hidden a bottle in his pocket and secretly takes some medicine. In the submarine, Felix hears a noise and goes to check. When he finds an abandoned flashlight, a mysterious woman suddenly pushes him off and runs away. Felix tries to stop her, but he gets kicked and pushed again. He immediately warns the officers and they follow the person around the base, but this stranger manages to push off a few officers before she keeps going. Felix manages to catch up to her, only to find himself held at gunpoint. It turns out the woman is Chelik. At that moment the other officers arrive and force her to drop her weapon. Then she's taken to the submarine and handcuffed. Remembering what Barish said, Felix looks around and finds empty cans in the vents, confirming Chelik has been sneaking around since the beginning and stealing food. Umut screams at Chelik demanding an explanation and is about to hurt her to make her talk, but at that moment Felix finds her uniform in the vents and brings it over. Chelik finally shares her identity and explains she searched for shelter after hearing her bosses discuss the solar flare. While hiding in the vents, she's learned a lot about everyone's personalities by just watching them and mentions how Yonja almost blew the diving mission. She also says Erene may be a traitor because he had been trying to communicate with someone outside the sub without telling anyone. Yonja and Umut rush to Erene's quarters and find a hidden compartment with the commander's log. All the names of Armin's group are listed with the words no affiliation except for Defin's, which has questions marks. The duo shows the list to Chelik, who tells them to watch Defin and don't let her suspect them. Meanwhile, Defin secretly enters the naval base and hooks up her satellite phone to try to connect to the computers to no avail. Minutes later, Umut is informed that 2 officers are sick, and Armin realizes they were 2 of the grave diggers. They consult Kem because he's the expert, and he does a little experiment. The food they took from the base tastes like paper, but the food they already had in the sub tastes fine. Kem concludes that the sun has corrupted the carbon structure of the food. This means all the provisions they brought are useless, and the good food will only last them a week. Kem points out that fresh food and stuff in bags is bad, but they should search for canned food because the metal may have protected it. After sending the troops to search every corner for canned food, Umut agrees to release Chelik in exchange for her help. Chelik gains access to the base computers and hears a message in Spanish. There's a lot of interference and the only part she understands is "May God protect us all." Then Chelik hacks into Defin's file and discovers that she did research about deep-sea habitats for the military organization NATO. It seems Defin knew about the sun situation before it happened. Meanwhile, Yonja chats with Defin and tries to befriend her to learn more about her, but Defin can tell she's being interrogated and cuts the conversation short. Minutes later, the group sees a plane fly above them. While Chelik uses the base computers to track it down, the radio picks up chatter from the Russians, who are trying to get in contact with the space station. When it's over, Chelik goes back to tracking the plane and notices Umut writes down a number. In the meantime, Armin's group finds a storage full of canned food, but when they taste it they discover it's gone bad too. Soon the troops come back and confirm they had the same result in town. The group gathers in the computer room where Chelik is keeping track of the plane. Armin sees the trajectory and concludes they're trying to outrun the sun by flying westward. He thinks they should get in contact with the plane and join forces, but Umut thinks they may be enemies and threatens to shoot the plane down if anyone tries to call it over. The sub announces they're finally leaving, but Kem decides to stay because his addiction is taking a toll on him and not even Defin can convince him to change his mind. Later in the submarine, Defin has a breakdown out of guilt. Rana is starting to suffer from claustrophobia, so Umut helps her calm down and shares a drink with her, admitting that Rana reminds him of his dead daughter. After the submarine leaves, the sun rises and Kem walks into the waves to wait for the end. The group waits a whole day and once it's nighttime again, the submarine comes back to the surface. Soon they find Kem dead on the shore and his friends take a moment to pay respects. Meanwhile, Chelik uses the computer again and finds the plane in Bulgaria. There are a few dams in that area, so they guess there could be an NATO bunker underwater. At that moment another Spanish message comes in saying that survivors can join them in the Gijón mine in Spain and giving out the coordinates. Umut gathers all the officers and announces they're going to Bulgaria because a military bunker will be safer than mine. Defin is worried that Umut is becoming a dictator who takes decisions for everyone and is wary of all the weapons they're bringing into the sub. After the submarine leaves, Umut checks Erene's log again and finds a hidden piece of paper with a code. He tries using it on the computer, but it doesn't work. At that moment he hears a broadcast saying that a group is going to Norway, so he orders Alton to change course without telling anyone. In private, Defin continues to use her laptop, but hides it when Armin comes to check on her. He wishes her a happy birthday and they end up getting naughty. Moments later, an explosion is heard and the sub-alarms go off. Everyone panics, but Umut immediately tells them it was a test to keep them on their toes and just turns off the alarms. Then he announces they're going to Norway, claiming that Bulgaria's food reserves are empty. Nobody believes him, so Alton says he also heard the same information on the radio. Then Umut tells them about the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, also known as the Doomsday Vault. This is a vault where seeds of plants from all over the world are kept in case of a global disaster. So Umut wants to get some seeds and grow them in the sub with soilless agriculture. Armin and Felix confirm it's hard but doable, but Defin insists Spain is a better choice. She points out that the seeds will take a long time to grow, meaning they won't have food until then. Not to mention Norway is a week away. An argument ensues as Armin supports Defin's idea, so Umut agrees to stop by Spain on their way to Norway, but he also says that if anything goes wrong he'll hold Defin and Armin responsible. Moments later, Defin uses her computer in a small room and hides it before coming out, which is noticed by Chelik. At the same time, Umut asks Alton to keep another secret, and when Alton leaves the room he's also seen by Chelik. Eventually the sub makes it to Spain and most of the group comes out with their weapons ready. On the speakers, they hear the same message about the mine that they heard on the radio. The docks are abandoned, so they get on some cars to follow the signs that point at the mines. In the sub, Chelik starts looking around for clues, only to be caught red-handed by Alton. A fight ensues, and after exchanging a few hits, Chelik manages to throw Alton to the ground and choke him until he's unconscious. She finally finds Defin's computer and starts looking through her messages. Someone had told Defin to keep quiet and not to trust anyone, but she hadn't known about the flare. Back to the exploring party, they make it to the mines and discover the elevator only takes 5 people, so the group splits. Their arrival is seen on security cameras, and after they get off, the group at the entrance is unable to call the elevator again. In the mine tunnels, a survivor comes out and grabs an officer as hostage, so Armin tries to make him see reason. Suddenly more survivors come out and surround them, revealing they're all miners. It turns out they sent a fake message because nobody would have come if they just had asked for help. Armin still wants to negotiate, but Umut quickly opens fire. Both sides start fighting and the hostage is killed. At the entrance, Felix finds the control room and discovers someone has cut the wires to the elevator, so it'll take him a while to fix it. Hearing the gunshots, Yonja puts on some gloves and decides to go down by sliding down the elevator cables. As the fight continues and both sides lose people, Defin runs down a tunnel and discovers a bunch of butchered bodies. The miners are actually cannibals and they've been eating the survivors who follow their message. A person comes after her, so Defin hides among the bodies and breaks the light bulb before covering a dying man's mouth to keep him quiet. A flashlight still manages to find her, but it turns out it's just Yonja. A desperate Defin wants to release the survivor and the noise causes head to that room. Felix and Rana are watching everything on the cameras, so they use the radio to warn them of the approaching man. The women react just in time, and after some struggle, they impale the guy to kill him. In the main room, Umut almost gets killed, but he recovers his gun just in time and kills his attacker. Then he shoots around and scares the remaining miners away, saving Armin, who had been overpowered. Afterward everyone reunites at the elevator, only for Felix to tell them he can't fix it. At least they get to lock up the doors so the incoming miners can't follow them. Armin looks around and finds another room with a control that activates the elevator. He puts a pickaxe on it to leave it pressed, then he runs out to grab onto the elevator as it starts to go up. The miners manage to break the door open then and wait for the elevator to return so they can continue the chase. The group rushes to the cars and immediately leave, however Daphne and Armin's vehicle is missing the keys and they can't follow. At that moment the miners come out, so the duo starts running back. The others are already on the docks and Felix discovers he accidentally put the keys in his pocket, so he wants to go back to help, but the officers force him to get because the sun is about to come out. A few officers stay for defense and immediately open fire when they see the miners coming after Armin and Defin. Most of the cannibals go down, but Defin trips and a miner manages to grab her hostage. Umut still refuses to negotiate and begins shooting them down, but he isn't fast enough and a miner manages to stab Defin in the back before Umut kills him too. Armin has a breakdown and clings to Defin's body as she dies in his arms, refusing to leave without her. The officers have to knock him out and drag him back to the sub before the sun comes out. In the sub, Yonja orders everyone to head to Norway while Umut keeps on trying to access Irene's file. After a bunch of failed tries, he finally guesses the password and finds the mission orders, realizing they've been lied to. He immediately gathers the troops and shares the news. They were initially told that they were on a drill order from NATO and found Armin's sub by chance, but it was all planned from the start. Irene always knew that they were on a search and rescue mission, and the goal was to save Defin because of her underwater habitat knowledge. Umut deduces that NATO knew about this disaster while everyone else did and have been working to save themselves at any cost. Suddenly Armin bursts into the room and attacks Umut on purpose, looking for a reaction. The other officers pull him back as he yells he wants things to end, but instead of killing him Umut orders his men to lock him up. Seeing this, Felix and Rana refuse to keep working on the preparations for the seeds unless Armin is released, but Umut simply says they won't get fed then. In the room where he's handcuffed, Armin overhears some officers say that 2 torpedo tubes are empty. Meanwhile Alton tries to make the soldiers work on the seed plans, but nobody knows how to pull off these alternate methods. Felix goes to see Armin and tells him the story Umut is spreading, so Armin asks to talk to Yonja. When she comes by, Yonja reveals she took Defin's tags and puts them on him. Armin then shares his theory: the tremor from the other day that Umut called a test was the missing torpedoes. The boat trim was also recalibrated, which makes no sense. He thinks that Umut is the one who is sabotaging this whole mission to obtain power. Yonja refuses to believe it, so Armin asks her to send Umut. When Umut comes by, he releases Armin and even gives him some food. Armin doesn't cooperate just yet, so Umut loses it and begins yelling as he shares surface. Rana and an officer go looking for the seeds, only to find a plane nearby. The officer tells Rana to hide while he investigates. Armin enters a building and finds an armed man threatening another one with a gun, a connection to the show Into the Dark. When the man sees Armin, he immediately shoots him. While Armin slowly falls unconscious, the people in the sub discover that a missile has been launched and it's coming after them.